Glenn Robbins. So we'll get some tourney analysis and maybe touch on some other things with the great Glenn Robbins. Literally, it's great to see you.
No one has ever looked at me and said those words, so I'm a little humbled and flattered. And although I will say you guys set me up perfectly, because when I logged in, the last thing I heard you say was disparaging remarks. And then you said, up next is Glenn Robbins. All right, well, we've set the parameters for this show.
The time.
Wake up with Defo, joined by Lubie. Welcome to the Defo Show.
All right. A very pleasant good morning, everybody. Welcome to another Peel Yourself Off the Mat Monday edition on the Defo Show. Jeff DeForest, the man in black there, looking like Paladin, the old Paladin shows. Gun will travel, all black. Johnny Cash kind of look for Mike Lubie. Lubie, it's good to have you guys with us. Lubie, how are you feeling today? I don't normally condone or recommend any form of violence. I don't think it's the way to solve our problems. You know, we're starting to swing at each other. But if anybody shows you their bracket today and says, "Hey, look at that! All my teams are in the Final Four,"
you're a douche.
How are you playing any year, even when you got a bunch of bombs in there, which is rare, but all four number one seeds make it. Chris Visser hits me right away yesterday with a trivia question. Is that weird when a guy calls you at like 9 in the morning and he says, "Hey, what's the most important question to ask about the Final Four?"
Oh, Jesus.
What do you think, Libby? What would be the first thing that popped into your head? What are you doing calling me at 9 in the morning on a Sunday?
Yes.
That would have been the first.
Exactly.
Look, I love the guy, but geez, God. How irrepressible, how relentless, how obsessed, how possessed can you be? But it is one that's been floated around now, and it probably should have popped into my head if I was not in a very deep and funky fog at that time. But this is only the second time this has happened, Mr. Barack Obama. Holy Barack Obama. Only the second time it's happened. 2008 was the last time and the only other time that all four number one seeds going into the NCAA tournament have made it to the Final Four, as Moses Malone would say. And guess what, Lubie? Here's the good part of the trivia question. So I would imagine many people are aware of that now. It's been stated many times and featured in media. Hey, look at that. The first time it's happened since 2008.
Yep.
But what is the back end of that trivia question that makes it especially, as our good friend who appeared on Bleacher Brothers just last week, Al Bernstein would say, especially intriguing, Louie? And that would be what? See, you're right there with me. I had no answer. You're hoping the guy just tells you, right?
I know the 4 ones, but I don't remember. I mean, wasn't it Ohio State and Florida in the championship game? Like that's all. Is it Florida's in both of them? Is it Florida?
You're a realtor. You have a real estate license. What would be the first thing that you would say to anybody? You're trying to unload some dump, fixer-upper on 3 Mile Island. Then what are you saying? Location.
Where? I don't even know where the Final Four is.
San Antonio, Texas.
Okay.
Much like it was in 2008. Now, that being said, wow, what does this do? Does this destroy the narratives throughout the season? That thing that we were trying to believe about college basketball in the era of NIL, the transfer portal, coaching carousels that are remarkably bizarre, where you have a guy like Kevin Willard, he takes his team into the Sweet 16 and says, "Hey, I can't believe how great this is. I love it here." Well, actually, he didn't say that. He was one of the few coaches. Is there a reasonably decent way to leave a job, Lubie? What do you think? Is there a good way to get out, especially when you're a popular coach? You've just achieved something. I don't know how monumental it is, but still, it's an indication that your franchise, your team is going in the right direction. You're in a Sweet 16, played real good basketball all year long, talking about the University of Maryland. They were competitive. They played that great game against Colorado State. That was probably the one thriller in Manila outcome that we've seen, although you could probably put the Gators game, their victory over Texas Tech, in that category. Could you not, Lubie?
Yeah.
That was a wild one, huh? How about this guy Walter Clayton Jr.? Not even step back threes. This was the kind of thing where you run to the 3-point line. You're under the basket, but you run to the 3-point line. And while you're falling towards the midcourt stripe, boom, you hoist one up there, and it's nothing but net in a remarkable comeback. So that was also a very competitive game. Probably the only one of the games that were involved to get to the Final Four that we saw. Michigan State only lost by 6, but they were down. They were being throttled. They were being suppressed. They were being oppressed the entire game. I never thought that was going my way, and here I am. Do I show you my bracket, Lubie? I had to figure in honor of the great Barack Obama that listen, got to pick at least one upset going to the Final Four.
I did
So
too.
I had Auburn versus Michigan State. I had Michigan State playing Michigan. That didn't transpire.
That's what I
Michigan
had.
State didn't look all. I mean, their offense was a little bit chaotic, was it not? It didn't seem to quite have the impetus that made you feel comfortable that, oh yeah, well they'll go in there and beat Auburn. So Auburn puts their finger right on the jugular right away, controls the game throughout. Michigan State, the final score looks a little better than I think the game would have indicated. Johnny Broom went out in that ball game, and Michigan State had a golden opportunity to surge their way back into things. They did get within 5, I think, a couple of times, but I always hate that when finally, maybe it looks like the Red Sea has parted and you actually have a chance to recover, especially if you're gambling on these games or have any kind of gambling interest. And then other guys start sinking dagger threes at junctures of the ball game, which you start doing the math and all the various permutations and extrapolations, and you realize I'm screwed. There's no way I'm going to come out of this ball game with a victory. So that was not really that close of a game. I didn't think. I don't know. What did you make of Auburn, Michigan State? No chance Michigan State was going to win that. Right?
I mean, there's a chance going into the game, but by the end of it, you sort of knew where that game was. Again, it's why this Final Four is interesting because 3 of the 4 teams really look. Auburn didn't dominate everyone, and Houston I know had a tough game in the 16s, but the 3 of the number ones, it felt like they coasted. Like I always thought in every game they played, it felt like it in the game. Okay, they're gonna win this game. Like it just felt like that. Florida was the one that was pushed a little bit much. If you're a Gator fan, I would think
2 giant scares they had.
Like UConn really had them and just fell apart at the end. And Tech had the game. I mean, literally, if they just play 3-point defense, and I get it, the guys have to make the shots. I get it. But there was a lot of room. When you're up 9 with like 3.5, 3:45 left.
Well, wasn't it like 16 with 5 minutes to go? Something in that.
I remember it got down to 9 with around 3:45. It was like a number where as long as you don't foul and give up threes, you have 30. The college clock is like 35 seconds. Like if you just run clock, even if you score once every like 3 possessions, it's the kind of number where like as long as it's not my team, you usually would change a channel because you're like, okay, they're gonna win.
You should win. Yes.
They're gonna win. Like it'll get down to free throws. I mean, as long as they don't do some stupid ass thing where they can't make a free throw, like they'll win. Like it shouldn't be that. Like the Gators, it wasn't even like it came down to the last shot. Like the Gators, because of the 3 ball, it was with 3 minutes left, it was 6 points. So it was like a game. Like it was just weird. Like between their defense falling apart and the Gators making threes, however you want to phrase it, like that was interesting. The only one worthwhile the whole weekend to watch, really. But it makes you wonder what the Gators are. A lot of these people were excited about the Gators going into the tournament. It's why I put Duke and Houston a little bit higher. And I mean, right now, of the 4 number ones, you'd have to put Florida 4, right? Like Florida had 2 struggles where Duke didn't have any, and I know Houston had their moments, but I don't know. It felt like
Houston's smothering defense would lead a lot of experts to use the tired and played out cliche defense wins championships. But if they do win the championship, which there you go again, me talking about my bracket, I think I'm hopelessly out of it after that Michigan State loss. That was the one thing I could not see all 4 teams make it. It's only happened once, Lubie. No matter how strong of an opinion you had about those 4 teams, to pencil them all into the Final Four, you had to be a gutless, unimaginative wimp. There I am condemning the people that were right, of course. Mr. Sports over here. I'm a better person, even though I was wrong. A lot of justification, a lot of rationalizations going on here today. But yeah, Florida, I mean, they managed to win. And they weren't having great ball games in those 2 contests. Texas Tech, a real good team. A lot of people love them. I was going to say, I mean, the whole narrative all season long was what, Lube? It was, wow, college basketball is so wide open.
Wide open.
And it turned out to be a bunch of crap. It really did.
It was just a boring, and it's a lot of people who are saying the tournament's dead. The tournament's dead. I don't know if the tournament's dead. I don't know about that. But it was I've been watching the tournament since I'm like 8.
Yeah.
7. It was the most boring tournament. Like the ratings were up last weekend. I don't know how. Like you can count on one hand how many games were just tight, let alone buzzer beaters, whatever.
A lot of them
You
are
really
somewhat
can't handle it.
unwatchable. I would agree with you.
The majority of and I'm not even trying to be negative because
No.
I love the tournament, but it was very, and I don't even know if it was all chalk. It just, I don't know. The games were not as competitive as they normally are,
Not
especially
quite
this
as lopsided as the early rounds of the women's tournament, which was an atrocity and pointed out exactly the very thing we've been saying all along, that there's just not enough depth there. But there is in the men's game. It just didn't turn out that way. There really weren't any great Cinderella stories. You had a couple of little moves early on. The coaching carousel became interesting with this Willard guy leaving for Villanova. After he did tell people though that this wasn't a Nick Saban thing. We're always going to be painted here in South Florida from the whole Nick Saban episode with the Dolphins, where he's at various post-game press conferences, and the natural question, Dave Hyde was the one that kept firing it at him, right? Where he finally snapped and said, "I'm not going to be the Alabama head coach." Now, it's a sensitive spot. You're still coaching a team. Maybe you've already got a deal in place. At least all of the terms have been somewhat agreed to. You might not have signed a contract yet. You're a coach. You're going to be on the move. What we saw, a lot of different coaches change positions. The guy that seemed to be the target of the most venom, though, what was this Kevin Willard, who left Maryland, but he may have been the only guy that was transparent about it, Louis, where he was saying, for me to continue with the program, there are going to have to be a lot of changes. Now he's sitting there with another job lined up and a lot of leverage, so might have been the spot to try and dictate to the administration, hey, here's what I want. I want a new athletic facility. I want $20 million in NIL money. I want no interference whatsoever from any athletic directors. I want my own limousine. I want my own plane. Holy Kevin Brown, what are we talking about? We just gave you $120 million and you want to use the team plane to go to Memphis? Get out of here. Juan Soto, the Yankees. How about the Yankees? They're ready to offer this guy $750 million to play baseball for him. He just carried him into the World Series. Was a perfect compliment for Aaron Judge. And we'll get into that a little bit because the torpedo bats now. Holy Sammy Sosa. What are we talking about with these torpedo bats, Lubie? Have you ever seen one of these things? I haven't seen a wooden version of it. I don't know that they were around when I was.
I don't understand. What, like, is it thicker? Like, what is the thing that makes it where it's?
Well, they have the barrel has the heaviest weight, and it's kind of smoothed down. It almost looks a little bit like a fungo bat, although it's not as thin at the bottom. But you know what? You see a bunch of aluminum bats that are configured this way. Have you ever seen one of those aluminum bats where all of a sudden the barrel end looks like a paddle almost? That's what the Yankees are using. Where is Rob Manfred on this thing? Did he not know? Is he unaware? Are they the only team in the league that uses this particular bat? How is that possible, Lubie?
As of now, they won't
kept
be
this under wraps in secrecy. They had Casey Stengel have a stack of these in his coffin, and they finally opened it up and said, "Good luck, people! 15 home runs in 3 games for the Yankees since they've been using this." Your boy Jazz Chisholm knocking a couple out of the park yesterday. Aaron Judge already has 4 home runs. People are projecting him out to have 73. A big controversy in baseball. Well, we'll get into that. But the Final Four, I mean, look, you have, you would have to say at least what appear to be competitive matchups. Duke cruising in. They annihilate Alabama, who had the 25 threes in their previous outing, couldn't throw a beach ball off the pier into the ocean in this game against Duke. Duke, 20-point winner. They had won their first couple of games by 30 plus.
I mean, they coasted.
Talk about a breeze job.
They've coasted.
So, that's going to be a 4.5-point spread there. Duke taking on Houston in the next round, but they destroyed Alabama, who looked great in the previous ballgame. Yep. So you would have to say, and they are favored to win it all at this point. It doesn't take a genius to take a look at that. And Auburn in the other game is going against them Gators, who are 2.5-point favorites over Auburn, which is kind of interesting because Auburn was impressive last night. That Johnny Broom, man, he was on fire.
The Gators, I guess, beat them head to head, but I mean, if you look at their tournament runs, Auburn's had a much more clean run than the Gators have.
They sure looked good yesterday. Auburn in winning their ball game. I mean, they were in control the entire way. Like I said, Michigan State getting within 6 was a little bit of an oddball outcome because they looked like they were getting drubbed and really had no chance to win pretty much the entire way. So The Final Four, well, we'll have a lot of steam on that coming up all throughout the week, including tomorrow. And this should be fun because we were at the press conference, Loopy, when Lon Kruger got smoked when he was coaching Alabama. And that was what? They lost by like 50.
No, coaching Oklahoma. It was the Final Four when.
Yeah, Oklahoma, yeah.
Was it Villanova? It was Villanova, North Carolina.
I think it was
Oklahoma,
Villanova beat them, I think, in the semifinal game by like 50.
Carolina beat your Qs, and that was also a drubbing. And Buddy Hield, who was like the player of the year, the best player in the country, didn't do crap in that game.
Brick City.
And he just sat there and fielded questions.
I remember being impressed by Lon Kruger, though, at that press conference. Now, is it easier when, I mean, people always say they'd rather, I don't believe this for 1 second, that you'd rather get blown out and embarrassed than lose by 1 point in triple overtime. I would much rather lose by 1 point in triple overtime and have been given a representative showing and be competitive and have a chance to win. Now, is it easier to get over a defeat when you were never in it from the very beginning, Lubie? I would think not. I mean, wouldn't you be horrified if you were beaten by 50 points in a semifinal game in a Final Four? The entire country is zoomed in. All of the people that are not even casual basketball fans are watching the game somewhere, and you look like absolute garbage. But Kruger kept his composure there. I guess there weren't many interesting questions that he could feel. Hey, what the bleep happened out there?
He handled it well. It was just you and I just sat there laughing. Like as they asked him questions, it was like, guys, they lost by 30.
What are you going
to say? They kept asking. It's like, okay.
I got run over by a truck. Are you okay?
Yeah. Like,
no, I'm not okay. I'm breathing. That's the only good thing.
That was classic.
Other than that, every bone in my body has been crushed. Every emotional fiber has been vanquished.
Oh my God!
So I'll look forward to that. Now we'll have other people on the Final Four as well. It's hard to get away again, Mr. Chalk, from all of the thought that Duke is so far superior.
They just coached. I know their route wasn't the toughest, but Alabama was legit. Alabama was a team by the end of it. Looked like they were a legit Final Four / championship contender, and that game was never in doubt even a little. Like and I get it, Houston was smothering, but Duke did it on both ends. Like Duke's offense was just, and it wasn't all Flag. Like that's the interesting thing is Flag's been phenomenal. When people thought he was going to be injured going into this tournament, he's been fantastic. But it's not just him; they have a lot of talent on that team.
Yeah, and the tallest starting lineup. Nobody under 6'6". Can you believe that in the starting lineup, Lubie?
And they play defense too. It's just that team's right now just motoring through. I mean, again, it's 3 other number ones. So I think they'll finally meet their match. Again, they'll face 2 number ones going forward, but I don't know. It's hard to see anyone taking
as a dismantling defense. So very impressive, and they're not. Unlike Michigan State, they're better offensively than Michigan State was. Michigan State was priding itself and kind of holding its chances on their defensive end of the court, but really weren't that imaginative in scoring, whereas Houston can score a little bit. I mean, they didn't put a ton of points on the board yesterday, 69-50 over Tennessee, but to smother Tennessee like that and make them look like Oklahoma, like Lon Kruger's Oklahoma team did against Villanova, was very, very impressive. And they can shoot threes. I think they shoot somewhere around 40% on three as a team, which isn't bad. 39%, something like that. So they're in there with a shot. But all right, the Final Four field is set. Tournament, not the most scintillating action that we've seen. Certainly, as we said, in terms of imagination, it didn't really lend itself to that. No Cinderella stories. Yet, highest rating tournament in the early rounds. I would think that they drew pretty good numbers over the weekend, even though there was a lot of other stuff, as we like to say in the business, going on. So let's get to some of that. As we're looking at the other thing, too, 3 Jewish coaches. The tribe is looking good, man. I mean, we may not be able to play, we may not be able to jump, but we sure know the game. John Shire, Jewish. Bruce Pearl, Jewish. Todd Golden, Jewish.
Oh, Jewish, too.
I think Sampson is Jewish also.
I don't think
one of those Sammy Davis type of things. I don't know.
No, I don't think he's.
I went my brother to. What are you talking about? Now, the reputation of these coaches, I guess Shire is the only one that doesn't have any kind of mold on his reputation. Bruce Pearl's been in any number of jackpots
He's
during
a
his
piece of
tenure
garbage.
as a head coach. Todd Golden was just being investigated for violations of Title IX considerations, which sounded to me like he was chasing some co-ed around the
It was
quad.
something about women, and he got it just went away magically.
Gone. El Zipperoni there, Pam Bondi, puts the gavel down and says, "We're not going to investigate this. What the hell are we got to look into that for?"
Exactly. Samson's had his
Hampton,
his whole career. I mean, like the professor has been talking about it. The world of college basketball has just come around to the way he's done it. Like him and Pearl,
exactly, yes.
they just now it's legal the crazy crap they were doing. It's okay to just pay guys.
It escapes me. I don't know that I ever saw what team this was, but there's a team that has all of its starters in the transfer portal.
Yes. I forgot what that was. It was one of the early round upset teams. Their whole team is in the
Whole
portal.
team's in the portal, along with 1,696 others. Unbelievable. Whole team's in the portal.
What a mess.
I mean, so that's as bizarre as it can get to try to figure out what's going on. And it's not as if any of these teams didn't benefit from the transfer portal.
Oh no, that's the thing.
That's
The
a two-way
coaches,
street.
I look, and you said it before we move on from college basketball, but my problem with the Willard thing is, why are these things happening during the tournament? Like, why is there not a moratorium? Like, coaches, if you're going to leave after the turn. Like, you want to get ahead, but this isn't like college football with the signing day stuff. Like, college basketball is not like that. Like, you didn't have to make your move now. Like, I don't understand this.
Well, Willard's only one of like a half a dozen significant coaching changes.
No, but didn't two happen in this tournament? Like,
Yeah,
that's weird to me. And you had kids talking about transfer portal in the tournament. Like, some of the teams are still alive. Like, I don't. That's the thing they have to. If they're going to get a hold of anything again, I don't want it to go back to the way it was before, but they have to have solid dates. And coaches have to adhere to that as well. Like, this stuff in the tournament, you're leaving your team, but you're still coaching your team.
There
like,
you go.
What are you doing? Like, it's just weird. You can't tell me it doesn't mess with the kids' heads. Like, I know some of the teams won that first game after that, but most of them didn't win many after that. Like, at some point, like, and I'm not mad at the kids for transferring. I don't care. I'm not mad at the coaches for leaving, but like, let the tournament be let there be some sanctity. Jesus. Like, the stuff going on during the tournament was freaking weird, and I don't remember that ever before. Like, this year, it felt like it
Get used to it. I don't know that there's any great way to administrate what's going on in college basketball and football right now. Who's going to administrate this? Who's got the authority to go ahead and legislate whatever it is that needs to be done to supposedly keep the level playing field?
Yeah.
It's leveled, but it's been leveled. I mean, all the principles, all of the tenets that they used to go by, and if they change the dates, is that really going to radically deter anybody from saying, "Oh, well, geez, we just signed this kid"? I mean, these agreements are being made in clandestine fashion. Every kid's got an agent.
Yep.
I was listening to a commentator saying what really transpires today is an agent calls one school and says, "Hey, I got 1.2 million coming from Xavier. What are you going to do, Maryland?"
100%.
And they go 1.3. He goes, "Okay, you got a ball player." And then that's if he decides to hang up the phone there and not make 6 other calls, continue to escalate the price. So complete and utter chaos. We were talking about no regulation whatsoever in what's going on. And so I don't know that, is that not just paying token homage to the idea of getting some control over this?
Oh, no, I don't think it controls anything. I just think it at least allows everyone in the tournament to focus on the tournament. Again, what people are talking about is the schools themselves forming their own governing body, because the NCAA doesn't have any power over any of this. And as much as they still try to suspend this and do that, the reality is when it comes to NIL, they don't have jurisdiction. So, and the transfer portal, they really don't have jurisdiction. So at some point, like, the schools themselves will form their own governing body, because that's where the interest is. I'm just curious how much of a lid they can put back on it, because once Pandora's box is open, you usually can't close it.
Kill the golden goose with greed. The regulating bodies in college sports for so long. Well, you know what? We don't want to damage their amateur status. Get the bleep out of here. What are you talking about? All right, many things to talk about. There were a lot of headlines. I had a few headlines here. I had Holy Barack Obama as my number one headline because
Yeah, this was his. This would have been his Final Four.
I figured out where all of those old Liberace costumes went. They're not in a museum somewhere in Las Vegas.
Okay.
Kim Mulkey bought them all.
She's something, boy.
And
She
why
really
would
is.
I revel so much? I mean, how many times have we mentioned this on the shows we've done over the many years we've been together, Mike Lubie Lubitz, and not meaning to be misogynistic or sexist, but let's face it, my interest in women's college basketball pales in comparison to my interest level in any form of the men's game, going all the way down to your 8-year-old kids. Now,
God.
they've developed some excellent players. They've developed some powerhouse teams. They haven't quite had the depth to catch up, although it's catching up. It's better than it was, where you only had, I mean, for years and years in college basketball on the women's side, UConn was, even though they've been there for like 30 some odd years now, they were somewhat of a newcomer to the party. Remember, it was Tennessee and Old Dominion were the two teams that everybody used to talk about. And Tennessee, under Pat Summitt, was far and away the leader. Then Gino came along. UConn established itself as a powerhouse. You have a couple of other teams that have sort of gotten into the category, many of whom, I guess all of whom are still alive. South Carolina certainly has been dynamite for the last several years and always a threat to win another championship. But yeah, I mean, I never thought I would revel in a team losing in women's basketball, but I love seeing Kim Mulkey just get smacked as she went down with LSU to UCLA in the women's tournament. And I couldn't believe the level of elation that I felt to see this woman trying to explain away a loss.
She's just gone. And again, it's not that, because a lot of times if a woman's strong, then she's the B word. If a man's strong, then no, it's not that. Because if a dude did the stuff she does, we would criticize them the same way.
Like
She's
Danny
the
Hurley.
She's the, it's like what the professor talks about in wrestling terms. She's gone full heel. Like she just embraced this early on in her Baylor days. And then when she got paid a ton of money to go to a program that wasn't really better. I mean, Baylor, what she did with Baylor, LSU's women's basketball wasn't better. It was just in the SEC.
Do you suspect there's something crooked about everything LSU does? I love Louisiana and the city of New Orleans, but
they have money. They have
does
a
it
lot of
always
money.
seem like there's a bunch of fugazi things going on surrounding Louisiana State University programs, football, basketball, baseball? Always something of concern pops up, and as you say, Lubie, is cleverly and quickly swept under the rug. We don't want to talk about that right now.
Oh, for sure.
But you don't know if that's Kim Mulkey on the sidelines or Jimmy Hart, the mouth of the South. Remember when he came to the
100%.
studio, Lubie?
She's
And he
gone
was
full
wearing the jacket with the piano keys, and you thought, it's Jimmy Hart, man.
the crap she
Little
talks.
leprechaun bouncing around on the sidelines there.
It's
I
like
don't know why I enjoyed seeing her. They weren't crushed, but I did enjoy seeing her trying to explain away another loss. And when you wear too much Tammy Faye type of makeup, especially around the eyes, Louie, not a big fan of overly made up women. I know it's kind of the glam thing today, but when the tears start flowing, Louie, and maybe you get a little sort of a fakakta look because you've been schwitzing throughout the ball game. That looks sad, didn't it? I mean, it was tears of a clown that we were seeing from Kim Mulkey yesterday. So why would I take any kind of pleasure in watching this woman get decimated like that emotionally? But I guess it's because of all of the demonstrative and obnoxious comments that we've seen. She was undressing some reporter in the previous game. I don't know. And after this game,
how many Final Fours have you been to? It's like a lot. I've been covering many Final Fours.
Looking at some fat schmo with a mustard stain on his shirt who just happens to be dedicated enough in his craft to want to cover women's college basketball and ask you a question. I mean, just give him an answer. Hey, how many Final Fours you been to, Jack?
I love that. It's like 30. They just do the Visser Mama. Yeah, I've been to like 25. How about you?
Sayonara Liberace. Yeah, exactly. All right. Many other things. Major League Baseball. We have right now the most dramatic team in Major League Baseball, and we condemn them as being such losers that they're not even worthy of being in the major leagues. We were talking about the C word, contraction, with
100%.
regard to the Miami Marlins, who win 3 games out of the 4 against the Pittsburgh Pirates in their opening series. and do it all in dramatic fashion. They're hitting home runs in extra innings. They're making Jeff Conine's kid made an amazing catch in left field, very similar to the catch that Conine made in the World Series. Well, when the Marlins won the World Series, and Conine made all of those great throws to Pudge Rodriguez.
Yep.
Unbelievable. I mean, except for the vertical leap, which was a little bit more significant, Conine's son made almost an exact replica catch of one of the great catches that we saw in Marlins history by Jeff Conine. Ironically, they inducted Jeff Conine into what is now, I mean, this was the first inductee into the Marlins Organization Hall of Fame.
Oh, geez.
Is that going to be like the Great Jewish Boxers book that people often reference? A very short list of players.
They've been around a long enough time where they should have some history, but I mean, like Gary, they have guys that were good for them, but it was like 2 to 3 year stretches. No one's had like a career.
32 years, in existence, this franchise.
Like Sheffield was good, but he was there, 4 years? Like Moises Alou was good. Was he there 2? Like, Kevin Brown is a great. Okay, what was he there, 2, 3 years?
Who else is going to go in there?
Beckett was fantastic in New York. To close out a World Series. Was Beckett great 2 years? Is it 3 years?
Jose Fernandez posthumously.
Yeah, maybe Fernandez. Like, they've had a lot of talent through the franchise, but no one's been there for more than 3 years. Like Miggy Rojas, like he at least was there for
Big man became Mr. Marlin after Conine. It was not necessarily he would never be forgotten, but So in the meantime, though, we condemn this team as being a bunch of just outright sorry losers, and they go out and win 3 out of 4, all in walk-off fashion, and they tied some record. I think that was set by who was it? The Detroit Tigers that did that. 3 of 4 walk-off wins. I didn't write that down. The 2006 Tigers were the other team that had 15 home runs in their first 3 games, besides the Yankees. And remember when Rafael Devers of the Boston Red Sox was popping off about Alex Bregman and, hey, third base is mine. So how about this? He gets off to an 0 for 16 start with 12 strikeouts. That has to be approaching some kind of a record for futility, no? 0 for 16, 12 strikeouts in the first 4 games. Well, what do you do with that guy, Lubie? Keep playing him?
He's one of the best players. They sort of have, and they just paid him. They sort of have to keep playing him. It's not working. I don't know. I maybe try the Patino. It didn't work for Patino, but like what they're doing isn't working either.
Patino's guy, Luis, is it Luis or Lewis?
Luis. They would call him Lewis, but Luis shouldn't be Lewis, but they were calling him Lewis.
Yeah, like it was Richard Lewis or something.
They were saying Lewis, yeah. I think it's Luis, but they were saying
transfer portal. Gone.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
St. John's.
And I thought I saw some intimation from Patino that he just didn't like the way Lewis was trying to be a one-man hero in that ballgame, even though he was ice cold. That's why he benched him. A lot of speculation on that. What's easier to figure out? Why Lewis was benched and what the real answer is from Patino, except for look, all you had to do was look at what was happening on the court. Or will this argument ever be settled between LeBron James and Stephen A. Smith? Have you seen enough of that?
I love that they keep going with it. Who cares? Do people really care? People really do care.
Stephen A. Smith, obviously, among people in the media today, knows how to milk this like nobody.
Yeah. I think it's dumb.
As tired as you are of seeing, as soon as his image pops up, what do you know that he's going to be talking about on any social media? Well, you know what? I didn't tell LeBron not to be a basketball player. I told him he's a lousy father. Okay, good. Aside from the fact that you're making a lot of money and seem to have mastered what? Is it just that he's being foisted upon us? Is he interesting in any way? Most people, as soon as you see Stephen A. Smith, you're thinking, what? Clown. Correct? Even the players that have been supportive of him come out and say, this guy, what the hell? He almost makes Kendrick Perkins look like he was Red Auerbach analyzing a game of basketball, no? Stephen A. Smith? But, wow, you talk about being able to milk it. Do we need to learn these techniques, Lubie? Is that where we're falling apart? Are we trying to take an honest...
you've never been a fan of that. I mean,
honest approach to things.
The yelling and the fighting and whatever. The fact that LeBron went along with it is why Stephen A's geeked up. Like LeBron should have just ignored it. Like we've said this his whole career though. LeBron's big issue because he doesn't have many for a guy that's been under a microscope since he's 14.
Yeah.
And his entire career is in the social media era. Like, and he's had no missteps outside of like people just being mad that he wins, and he literally has no black marks on his off the court career. He cares too much. Like that's so him and Durant, or like Durant would have these fake Twitters and fight with people. Like again, when you're worth $1 billion, why do you care about like Steve? Like that's the one thing. I get it. No one wants their kids name dragged, but your kids playing professional sports. It's not like your kids in AAU or something. Like he did not talk ill. I think he was a fan of Bronny, to be brutally honest, Stephen A, until he was in the NBA. Even if it was unfair, because again, Tyrese Maxey is an NBA All-Star, and Bronny is a guy that probably should be in college still. Like it doesn't matter. He's a pro. So to me, that's where this began. Was not Stephen A. This is what Stephen A. You said it. This is what he's made a career out of the last 20 years, 25 years. Like this.
Oh, he's loving this.
It's LeBron. Like LeBron, dude. Like why do you care? And then the going on the McAfee thing was a calculated move he did on purpose, but that just allows Stephen A. to talk about this for another 2 weeks. Like,
exactly.
Why?
I don't believe that this issue will die until Stephen A. does, which I won't be around for because he's a younger guy.
Exactly.
Well, it's funny. I mean, I remember approaching Stephen A. Smith a couple of times about coming on a show. You're sitting there. You know how it goes. You're on Radio Row for the Super Bowl, and you're on a morning drive East Coast show. So now if you're somewhere out west where the time zone is an hour, 2 hours, even 3 hours sooner, you have no chance of grabbing anybody for any interviews at that hour in the morning. So whatever you have set up, that's fine. We were always working kind of a day ahead because there was nobody around. But every now and then you would grasp at somebody. Yes. And I remember Stephen A. Smith was sitting a couple of booths away from me. So I asked him, you know me, a little humble approach there. Stephen A., I don't mean to bother you, but almost like Columbo. I don't know if you have time to answer this question, but did you kill that guy? But he couldn't have been any nicer. He seemed very humble and down to earth. He hadn't quite blossomed into the media monster that he is now, but he was definitely up there and well known. And he seemed very gracious about doing this sort of stuff. No, you saw him there. I remember in San Francisco when we were out there, one of those places, and he was doing interview after interview, and more than happy to accommodate the people, and seemed to give it a sincere effort. It wasn't like when Rich Eisen came over and sat there like, where we had, just gone ahead and insulted his children to open the interview. That was awkward, man. When a guy's really not into it.
Well, we didn't want him. It was annoying because we didn't. We've never been the let's get Dan Patrick. Let's go get other people that do exactly what we do. We've never been the like fawning over other radio people.
The media interviewing the media. It's always great.
It's fine, but we do it on our show. Like we've never on Radio Row. I don't think we've ever done that. Like we just don't care about that. Like we barely talk about the game. Like that was always our thing about it, was everyone's breaking down the game with 20 people. We're interviewing 40 people because of how our setup was. And I don't know if we ever talked about the game with anyone.
It was always an afterthought.
Even with NFL analysts, we would like purposely like bounce around and barely talk about the game. So like to have media guys didn't really make any sense. So like we didn't want Eisen. We were he was on our network and they sort of foisted him on us, and we're like, fine. Like we were okay because at least the way he was, we thought it would jibe with what we do. He likes to joke around a little bit. It seemed whenever he was on I never listened to a show, but I would hear him on Dan Patrick and he would be sarcastic and he would crack wise. So I'm like, okay. Like he would work with us, so we're like, fine. But we didn't seek it out. We weren't even. We were always overbooked. Like I would always turn down people. Like so they threw him at us. We're like, fine. So then he comes on and he was like giving us start treatment. He was like, dude, we didn't want you.
Yeah. Get off my set. Yeah. How do we graciously get out of this? Well, Rich, it was great having you on the show. I tell you what, you're a hell of a guy. NFL Network, I'm glued to that 24 hours a day, and it's largely because of you. Thanks so much for being with us. And go bleep yourself. All right. We're going to come back with more. Much more to talk about. Some NBA stuff is going on. NHL Ovechkin, he's within 4. I didn't think he was going to do it this season, Lubie. Did you? He was out for a while.
Yep.
Not scoring at the hellacious pace that we've seen in the past, although certainly no slouch. I mean, can you believe this old geezer has 37 goals this year?
It's crazy because in the last couple of years, you haven't really heard his name as much. The Capitals had sort of fallen out of favor where they were like a playoff kind of team, but they weren't contending. And now they're like 15 points up on everyone. They're
And
just
no one's giving them even the most remote chance. The Panthers are favored. Florida
Yeah.
Panthers are favored to win the Stanley Cup this year.
They've faded a little bit, the Panthers, but they're hanging around. Again, their division is ridiculous, or conference is ridiculous once again with the Lightning and the Maple Leafs, which one of these years you think they're going to break through at the city of Toronto.
Holy Joe Blake. Are the Leafs ever going to win anything again? How is that possible?
I don't know. They're good every year now. This isn't like back in the day when they sucked all the time. Like with Austin Matthews, like they're good, legit contender every year, and every year they lose like the first round.
It's incredible. They're drowning.
They love the sport so much. Like they love it so much. Like they love hockey. Like
you would have to think it's the number one franchise in terms of prominence in the National Hockey League, is it not? I mean,
the Canadians
possibly could have been that. I don't know if any other franchise even comes close. Montreal Canadiens because of all their championships, but Toronto is generally. I mean, I'll never forget this description. I was actually at Keelan Racecourse. We were getting ready to go out there on some shuttle bus that was going from the Ramada Inn, and there was a guy, a cat named Toronto Dave, was waiting for the bus, and he was in the handicapping tournament. He was one of those guys that would have the tournament won on the very first bet. He would bet all of his money on some 80-1 shot. It would come in, and then he was posting the rest of the way, throwing $100 bills around at the bar. And we were talking about, I don't know, there's some issue. Maybe Toronto was playing Montreal in an NHL Stanley Cup series or something. But he looks me right in the eye, Toronto Dave, and says, Montreal is a French ghetto. And I thought, you're right. I've never been there. And I can see it just from those guys at the tennis courts that poach your tennis balls and look at you with that, sort of quasi-French accent and tell you, oh, no, Penfour, no. Like, hey, listen, Frenchie.
Dude, every ball you have is opposite of that.
How do you steal a ball from the other court?
It's like, dude, I know what ball I have.
They're not coming down here anymore anyway, right? Did you see that story?
Supposedly not. Yeah, the Canadians are not coming in force like they once were.
So, I mean, maybe there is some benefit. All right, we're coming back with more. Much more to talk about here. A wild finish to the Miami Open in tennis with the men's bracket.
Yes.
Second youngest guy ever, Jakub Mensik.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's got a dynamite serve. And you talk about composure. 19 years old. Can you ever imagine, like, actually going against your idol? In a sport, it's happened. It's happened throughout the history of sports on numerous occasions. But this kid's 19. He's playing a joker in the final. The joker hasn't quite been the joker in the tournament, but good enough to win all of his matches. And this guy, Jakub Mensik, who just knocked off Taylor Fritz, boom, comes through. 19 years old. Second youngest guy to win the Miami Open. Alcaraz was the youngest. And guess who was the third youngest? I'm going Chris Visser on you again, my friend, with a tough question right out of the chute. And the third youngest, of course, was Novak Djokovic.
Okay. I was going to say, because Nadal, Federer, and Djokovic all were really good pretty much out of the gate. So I was going to say one of those three. Because Sampras took a little bit of time, and Agassi, we know, took a long time to settle in. So I was like...
Yeah, it's just a Miami Open, though. Talking about that.
I mean, even like just being good young, though. Like those three guys were really good young. So I was going to go with one of those three.
Remember, Joker was kind of... he was, talked about in very disparaging terms because... people thought he didn't really give a flying one about the sport. He was out there literally as a joker. Could that have been any more wrong? Did he reverse that somehow with some kind of bizarre mental discipline? Because I've said this before, and a lot of people would argue. I know your man, the aforementioned professor, a dear friend of the program here, and no doubt will be a very, very worthwhile listen on Friday's edition of the program with his college basketball picks. Been really good on the tournament so far. For the most part, I mean, he's been crushing it. Other people would argue this too. We used to hear Dan Levitard making this argument, and I thought it was a very lame argument on his part because it sounded like he was just doing it to go skip Bayless and say that LeBron's an average basketball player. And you're listening to that and looking at it going, nobody in their right mind could make that statement. But the professor and Levitard would argue there's no such thing as clutch.
No.
And I could not disagree more. But you would have to say Novak Djokovic, among players in any sport, in any era, would have to be. And Professor added in, because we illustrated this with the whole idea of mental toughness.
Mm-hmm.
Who's more mentally tough that you've ever seen compete? than Novak Djokovic. Jordan. I mean, there are guys in the category, but you would have to say that he's in there, no?
Yeah, I mean, in the world of tennis, at least, it's hard to find. I mean, Federer was calm, cool, collected. Nadal was a fighter. But Joker is just like precision.
That could deliver when it looked like they're down and out. When things are going against you, when you're not having a particularly good day. But all of a sudden, even down 6-3 in a second set tiebreaker, you somehow rally and make it 6-6.
Mhm.
You're just not going away with these. And this guy dispensed to the Joker in a couple of tiebreakers. Definitely somebody to watch. So anybody that tells you, well, I tell you, men's tennis is boring and no great Americans, they may be. There are a couple of Americans that are at least sniffing the top and competitive with the top guys. They may not be winning. But in terms of competitiveness, wow. I mean, this is without the number one in the world, Yannick Sinner, who's been on suspension. And what I have to think is maybe the most bizarre drug suspension I've seen since Bob Baffert first lifted up a syringe, no? What the hell is that? He kissed a girl who had some kind of lip balm. No, it was like the most bizarre thing. His explanation almost seemed Canelo-esque, didn't it? Where, oh yeah, well, I had a taco down there at Johnny Tacos, and yeah, it's had some bad meat in there. Okay, we'll buy that. These drug investigating bodies, but yeah, Sinner. I mean, they told their story was, hey, well, we believe his story. There's no way that he did this, and then he gets suspended for 3 months. Kind of crazy, but comes back just in time for the French Open. So what he misses was unfortunate for the fans here this tournament. But yeah, Joker right there. Toughest out maybe that you'll find in any sport. I would have to say I would nominate Novak Djokovic right up there with anybody. Who else would be in the category, Lubie? Besides, I mean, obviously Jordan would be one. Clutch. Brady? Would you say Brady is deserving of that?
I mean, making things happen. Look,
was Brady always clutch, or did he have a lot of luck too?
No, I mean, what Brian saying is
Brady was lucky his whole career. No,
I mean Reggie Jackson was clutch. I mean, there are guys throughout history that Larry Bird was a guy that was very clutch. He made big shots. I mean, look, Ray Allen had his.
Gordie Howe, was he clutch?
I mean, plenty of guys that clutch. I don't know. I always think it's tough because a lot of the time when you mention guys that are clutch, they're just great. So I was like, well, I hope they're clutch. Like Kobe, yeah, well, he's a top 15 player ever. He better be clutch. Like
there are guys that have failed to deliver though in those spots. So James Harden would be one that comes to mind. I mean, it's so obvious.
He's horrendous.
It's the 6th, 7th game of a playoff series, deep into the playoffs, and guess what? Well, it's inexplicable. Harden is a Luis like 3 for 17 here. We don't know if Rick's going to put him on the bench or not. We'll be back with more in a moment. Now that. How about your Marlins, Lubie? What do we make of that?
I'm scared. I don't know what to do with them. I'm happy, I guess.
Under players are hiding under the foundations of buildings that have been condemned, hoping that they fall. It's 8:49.
Hey, folks, Tony Segreto here. Let me ask you a question. What do you look for when you go out to eat? Good food, obviously, friendly atmosphere, not too loud, but good energy, reasonable prices, and a place where you feel comfortable. All those ingredients, no pun meant there, are hard to find unless you're talking about the Texas Roadhouse. You see, they encompass all of those attributes. Really, really good food, amazing atmosphere, good for a family, good for a date, or just a night out for yourself, and prices that will make you extremely happy. Their ribs unmatched. Steaks hand cut every day. Everything, and I mean everything, is made on site, including their incredible bread. It's the one day, folks, that you can forget about low-carb diets. Trust me when I tell you, Texas Roadhouse, your restaurant, your destination when you say, where should we go and eat tonight?
From the newly renovated sports bar to the beautiful bayside views captured at the Tiki Bar, Jimmy Johnson's Big Chill has it all. Located at mile marker 104, the Big Chill also offers waterfront dining while experiencing breathtaking sunset views of the Florida Keys. It's simply the hottest spot in the Keys to cool off. That's Jimmy Johnson's Big Chill at mile marker 104 in Key Largo. For more information, call today at 305-453-90.
You know what I'm going to do? Because you don't never give me a fair shake. You know that? So I'm going to let you talk to Victor Ortiz, all right? I'm through. They put somebody else up and give me an interview.
What are you talking about? What are you
you
talking
heard him.
about?
You never give me a fair shake. HBO needs to fire you. You don't know about boxing. You ain't you got I wish I was 50 years younger and I'd kick your ass.
The modern day odd couple, Defo and Lubie, are on now. It is, of course, the Defo Show.
You can only flip the switch on Father Time there. At what kind of price would you have put on Merchant Mayweather if Mayweather was Mayweather and Merchant was 50 years younger? What do you think, Libby? Gets knocked out in half a second, no?
For sure. Merchant.
And a tough Damon Runyon type of character. Merchant was a delightful guy. Everybody loved him, but Larry Merchant. And who didn't love seeing that at the beginning of all of those HBO telecasts, right? Jim Lampley would go through a bunch of words that you needed a thesaurus. You're talking to boxing fans, and they're using all of these 12-syllable words there to describe what's going on. And you're thinking, I don't know if it's really that scientific, Jim. Seems to me one guy throws a punch, tries to break the other guy's nose, and if he's successful, he ends up, in all likelihood, winning the match if he does it more often than the other guy. And then Merchant would get up there and always kind of like Jack Whitaker, would you say? Did he do a little Jack Whitaker, Haywood Hale Broun type of poetry? The type of stuff that you hate when I used to try and do it. And I wasn't really very good at it because I was imitating guys that were real artists at that time. And I was trying to fuse myself into that or refuse myself into it. And it was a disaster. But and I don't know that I could have looked into a camera in any of those many boxing matches I did on TV and said, two fighters at a crossroads. I mean,
what did that mean?
You wait to see them drop the gloves and get on. Wow. Larry Merchant. Unbelievable. So that clip, yeah, I don't know. I mean, everybody remembers it. That what a fiasco that whole fight was, where Mayweather knocks out Ortiz while he has his hands behind his back and he's trying to apologize.
He's not even ready. They allow it.
Carlos Padilla, Hall of Fame referee. Talk about not doing your job. Hall of Fame referee, and he allows us to go ahead and transpire. Doesn't even bother to get between them. I guess he was within the confines of the rules, the parameters of the rules. Because what is the number one rule, Lubie? Protect yourself at all times.
Yes, that's true. In boxing, 100%. Until you hear the bell, you fight until the bell. Yep. Or even through the bell, honestly.
He had Victor Ortiz. I thought he had a lot of talent, the kid. But and if you remember this, of course, he's kind of mauling Mayweather in the corner, headbutting, doing all kinds of crazy stuff. And then he goes to apologize. And while he's standing there with his hands at his sides, Mayweather comes in and knocks him out. It was his only knockout of the $300 million that he generated in pay-per-view money over the many years that he was doing the shoulder roll and barely doing enough to win fights on the very biased scorecards that were being turned in. Although I don't know that he was ever really threatened, right? Because nobody really.
No, because they never let him. He never fought. He was the beginning. He was the end of me caring about boxing, like because Canelo was like, "Oh, that's a great strategy. Fight no one in their prime. Wait till anyone worthwhile is old as heck, and then never fight." Because Canelo Young was aggressive from the Mayweather fight on. Canelo was like, "Oh, that's a great strategy. I can make lots of money. People will call me great, and I really do nothing."
It was crazy, huh? The whole thing. But long in the past, and Larry Merchant, of course, gets up in a ring afterwards and starts insulting Mayweather, at least in the eyes of Mayweather. Which did it not seem like Mayweather had a preordained agenda that when he got to the Merchant interview, he was going to destroy him?
Yes.
Just 100%. Assassinate Larry Merchant. It's an awkward position to be in. It was kind of like we felt that time at Joe Philbin said, "So I hear you have a nickname for me." In our radio station's scheduled one-on-one that we no doubt were paying a large premium for to be the only people that were interviewing smoking Joe Philbin straight up. And then it turned out he loved it, right? So that was that. All right, a couple of other things, Lubie. You do have a is this all BS, these rumored trades where the Tennessee Titans not sold that Cam Ward is the savior for their franchise, which I could see that.
I agree. I mean, I think in any other draft, I think he'd be a late first-round guy. He's not a surefire guy. He's just the closest thing in this draft. Like, he has the physical tools.
Great arm, I think the kid has.
He does, and he's big. He's strong. He can run. He's a modern day quarterback. This year showed he's a good leader. He took a UM team that probably won 6 games without him to double-digit wins. It's hard to overcome Cristobal, as we're all learning. But he did the best he could overcoming Mario Cristobal. Like, yeah, he's a legit NFL quarterback. I just don't know. Again, he has a lot of the issues that are hard to work out of a guy. Like, as the guy who is the biggest fan of Jameis Winston in the world, my dad still is like, well, if he just gets a line, I'm like, Dad, it's pretty much clear what Jameis is. He gives you a tons of throws a game where you think he's amazing, and then he gives you a handful of throws a game. You're like, what the hell? What the hell is that? And no matter how good of a line he has, that's just what he is. Like Ward, I don't know if he's there, but Ward takes he holds onto the ball a long time, and he takes a lot of chances. And those are the two things that if you're Brett Favre in the 1990s, they loved. If you're the Tennessee Titans in 2025, they don't. They want you to get rid of the ball. They want you to be decisive, and they don't want you to be a hero. Yes, the heroic quarterbacks are the ones that are great, and we give credit to them, but we didn't like seeing them do that their rookie year.
Well, Jaden Daniels, I guess you could put him in that hero category because he was there.
And he did a lot of those things, but you know what? He's the kind of guy that there will be. I mean, these people like me question him a little bit. And again, he still wasn't like the way Ward did it. His whole career scares me, so I could see organizations wondering, well, he likes to chuck it a lot. He likes to do a lot of these things. Like Jane Daniels did a lot of that at LSU, but his turnovers were down. Like Ward, even at UM, still had some interesting turnovers. Like so he's not an automatic number one, but who is?
Yeah.
Like the Titans need a quarterback, and none of the Dart is like a second round guy that'll work into the first round. Shedeur Sanders is really a second, third round quarterback that, because of the attention from his father, has found himself in this position where I think he could be a quarterback eventually. He's not an NFL quarterback in year 1 or 2. Like he's just not. So Ward is. You could put Ward out there year 1, and he'll win you some games. He'll get you a lot of flash. He'll get you a lot of attention. He'll put people in seats, the kind of stuff you want from a first overall pick. I just don't know if he'll win your Super Bowl. Like I don't know what his ceiling is.
Well, and in all likelihood, not with Tennessee anytime in the near future, because there's a reason they have the number 1 pick. But the proposed deal was with the Pittsburgh Steelers, who also their only quarterback on the roster, Mike Lubie, if I can channel my inner Mike Tannenbaum, is Mason Rudolph right now. This was a team that had both Fields and Russell Wilson on the roster last year. So you thought, wow, they've got 2 viable starting quarterbacks in the NFL. That's pretty good. You talk about Yogi Berraism, deep depth. That's great. And either guy is possibly somebody that you would be very happy with as a starter. 2 teams are going to be looking at that aspect this year. But the proposed deal was a TJ Watt for the number 1 overall pick to the Pittsburgh Steelers, who then draft Cam Ward as their savior at quarterback because they really don't have anybody on the roster. And with that to change, the Tennessee Titans end up with the 21st pick, I believe. And you would think that would be around the territory that your man, Jackson Dart, would be available. So they would also have a bunch of draft so-called cachet.
Yep.
Where they were getting a bunch of other picks to go along with it, and a standout defensive player in TJ Watt.
Yep.
Perennially a league leader or the league leader in sacks, and clearly a menacing presence, as they say, when healthy. But I don't know if you weren't a believer in the whole Cam Ward thing, that he was a veritable cinch to be a top-flight quarterback, and we know that is a very inexact science, as you would have said that about Trevor Lawrence, correct?
Lawrence is the one that is the most questionable one to me. I like Justin Fields a lot, but at least he didn't go till like 10.
Yeah.
So you're not assuming a 10th overall pick. Fine.
But this was a guy came in with Andrew Luck type of
luck. Yeah.
Right.
It was out of high school. Then in literally his freshman year, he's winning the championship. Like every year, he's a Heisman contender. Every year, he's a championship contender. He had the arm. He could move. He was accurate. He was a leader guy. And yeah, Jacksonville has been mired in mediocrity, but I mean, their owner has money. He's willing to spend. So like, and they've spent. Like he was the one that's the most questionable about. Like he was like it was Elway and Luck and then Lawrence. Like he's one of those all-time generational you suck for. And the fact that he's literally no one knows what he is at this point. It's like Tannehill type stuff where he got the big deal, but you're like, you're not confident in Trevor Lawrence going forward. If you're
revolving door of coaches there,
yeah, that's
including
like,
Urban Meyer. My God. Well, what a failed experiment that was. Jacksonville is a bleep hole of a town. Also. My brother lives there, and I'm going to say that. Sorry for all you people in Jacksonville if we offended anybody, but you know what I'm talking about, right? It's a gateway to Georgia, for God's sake. People that are trying to escape the Deep South are ending up in Jacksonville. Tough place. I mean, they really haven't been able to do much. Holy Mark Brunell, what are we looking at here? All right, so it's Chalk City for the Final Four.
It is.
Is everybody on board with the Kim Mulkey thing? And what are you doing with those? What's up with the jackets there? I mean, literally, I thought she had invaded the wardrobe room of Liberace or Elton John or something.
It's like Wayne.
Just at the Sphere. I'll take a few of these. Yeah, no problem, man. Just wheel them right out the back. We don't have a problem with that. And the matchups, Final Four, Gators, Auburn. I'm going to ask for a preliminary pick here. Lubie, Gators, Auburn. Gators laying 2.5. I won't even factor in the point spread for you because this is only for entertainment consideration. Who do you see prevailing in that one right now? Now, you can change your opinion as the week goes on by various handicappers and such, experts.
I think Auburn's played better. I think Florida's had their struggles. And honestly, if Texas Tech just defends the 3-point line, Florida's not in the Final Four. I think Auburn won that game. And their best player went out, and they still had a nice lead. He came back in, and they made it like it was
they did a good job of fending off Michigan State.
They made it like it was your guy. They made it like it was Willis Reed. But they had a lead. Like it wasn't Willis Reed. They were doing fine without him. He's just their leader. He comes right back in and nails a 3. Like the Gators have a lot of talent, and Clayton was strong down the stretch. But the way Brune is playing, and I don't know. I think Auburn's better.
All right, you're taking the points then with Auburn. I'm going to give you the points if you're taking them.
Look, I think Duke and Houston are the two best teams, but they play each other. So
yeah,
one of those.
That'll be a wild dynamic too. Kelvin Sampson and this smothering defense.
Yep, and Duke is free.
They obliterated Tennessee. Tennessee looked like they were going against one of the early season games against Geno and the UConn women.
Yes. They never let them
8-10, and the starters are still in the ball game. All right, we have to run. A lot of fun being with you. I don't know that we even touched on some of the things.
Your Heat, three in a row.
I mean, Heat, a monster now, is a number 10 seed. I'm going to reiterate and just trying to get the organization behind my movement for J.B. Bickerstaff to be the coach of the year in the NBA. How is this possible?
I mean, they're the 5th seed
now. Detroit, a number 5 seed. They won 14 games last year with Monty Williams as their head coach, a former coach of the year.
They're the first team ever to
same team
win 3 times the amount of games as you won the season before.
My God. And you talk about, I don't know how, I have to watch the video on this. A fight spills into the stands. Holy Ron Artest. What are we talking about?
Yeah. I don't know if the fans got involved, though.
Timberwolves and the Pistons. They're in a bloodbath.
Yeah.
Spills into the stands. That fat guy getting knocked out, who was it that hit him in the face there in that Detroit Pistons video against the Pacers? When the brawl took place in the stands. I remember a fat kid comes wandering out there. And
like a stupid ass, and then it's throwing hands. It's like, dude, what are you doing? You're like on the court. It's fair game on the court.
That looked like one of those Butterbean Ash knockouts.
Yes.
Where they found some bloated stiff somewhere in Paramus, New Jersey, and they took him out of the bowling alley and said, hey, you're fighting Esh tonight at the Palestra. All right, we'll see you guys tomorrow. Thanks so much for being with us. And then also tomorrow, Lon Kruger joins us, a special 10 a.m. edition of Conversations here on Bleacher Brothers Network. And so we're looking very much forward to that. So we'll have a lot of analysis, too, on the tournament. And we will see you tomorrow at 8 a.m. Next edition of the Defo Show. For Mike Lubie Lubitz, I'm Jeff DeFore. See you next time as we leave you know that.
The time.
0 for 16, 12 strikeouts. He's getting skewered in Boston, according to one Chris Visser, who follows us very closely. What else could you say? I mean,
nothing.
But you pop off a big mouth. Good player, though. You would have to think that this is an aberration. He had to be consoled yesterday by various members of his team. I think even the Yastrzemski sent him a letter. All right, we'll see you next time, and thanks so much for tuning in. It's 9:05.
Let's go to eat a damn snack.
Look what they done to my show.